Well, hello. A different perspective. Welcome back to Big Board. I thought while I was packing this game up that we would have a chat about something that has been on my mind with monster games and large games in general. And in particular, I was thinking about how as a game becomes larger in terms of number of maps and number of counters and the number of actions that have to happen every turn, we get or we end up with a situation where we have many combats going on. So in this particular instance here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, possibly 12 combats that we were going to execute in this turn. And each one of those combats, I imagine if you were very adept at this game, really? Thanks for sharing. You didn't like the whole idea? It's the dog. I think if you became very adept at the game and were very fast, I know. It's a problem. I'm slow. If you become fast with math, I think you could run through a combat in 4 minutes, probably. So what did I say, 12? So we're looking at 40, 50 minutes, an hour to do combats across the spectrum of one side's turn. And then you've obviously got, prior to that, you've got your movement, and you may have heavy barrages, and you may have some other activities that go on. You might do hasty attacks in preparation or prior to a deliberate attack with some other units. So you're looking at every bit of an hour per turn, and so my point about that, and this is just with 2 maps, right? And so this is what, in essence, is 2 maps worth of combats. What ends up happening, I think, is that you will see the larger a game gets, to me, it's almost like the lower the fidelity and tactical nuance is required to enable the cadence of the game to keep going, the activity in the game to keep going, so such that you're able to finish the game, finish the turns, get stuff done. And it reminds me of the old Europa days where there was a game that had a lot of fractional math, take 1/5 of that and 4/5 of this, and mess around with that and come up with an answer with massive stacks of units to get a result. And I think because they were early monster games, there was certainly an attraction to the whole concept of monster games and getting that rich fidelity. But I think today's wargamer wants something that's consumable, but also has some good history and has some fidelity and has some, let's call it, for want of a better term, realism. And we know it's not real, but just realistic enough that we feel like there is some differentiation between tanks and infantry and artillery and aeroplanes and all the rest of it, so that we can actually feel like we're doing something interesting and useful with the particulars of the era or the game that we're playing. So there's a fine line here, and I'm not just referring just to Armored Knights, but it's other large systems like GOS, the Grand Operational System, and even OCS, right? TCS, if it's a multi-mapper. If you have too many transactions and activities in a given turn across many maps, you start to I think it wears you down a little bit. I've found as we've gone into this, was on the 4th turn now, I think, that we're certainly getting faster at the calculations, and I can look at things and go, okay, I'm not going to use air in this. I will use some artillery here, and I know that I skipped the artillery density rules because I know I'm not supposed to do that, but it's okay. I skipped the artillery density rules just because it wasn't going to add a whole lot of value, and to me anyway. And so I was not, and I wasn't necessarily sure whether they were just for heavy barrages or whatever the case may be. But it was yet another chart and another die roll that we needed to. And it wasn't a die roll. but it was another chart that we had to reference to get something done. So I think that there's a trade-off. The larger the game, the simpler and cleaner and less calculations and mechanical activities, physically mechanical activities that happen, it's better for the game and better for playability. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I was looking at the TSWW series, which is kind of a Europa reboot, and I had one of the little modules that someone had given to me. It was set in North Africa, and it was, I want to say it was 42, and all the counters had the 1940 values on them, whatever that meant. And so before I even started playing with the game, I was supposed to multiply all of the combat factors by 1.2 or something along those lines. I forget now, this was a handful of years ago. And so you had to do that, and that was going to be your base combat value. And then you would get into the system and do all the other nonsense that went on with that system to make it playable, all the math for the combats and stuff like that. Anyway, interesting stuff. So I've been noodling over this, and I think one of the challenges with this game is that it wants to be a tactical level game. It wants to be a monster tactical level game at the company and battalion scale. And I can see me building these huge stacks. I could get 12 steps in here if I got all the armor from two different divisions, or a couple of different battalions. I could get 12 steps of armor attacking one hex, or I could get 8 steps in 2 hexes, 2 different formations, and all the math that would go into that in just terms of multiplications and additions and all the rest of it. It's just tiring to do that, and I don't know that the joy I get out of the result in the combat table is enough, because it's highly attritional. It's lose a step. And if it's in a hedgehog, well, then you don't lose a step, but you lose the hedgehog, and then you don't get the retreat. So basically, you just did an attack, and in essence, nothing happened other than perhaps the attacker lost a step. And if it's a small combat, then you're using this little token thing to you flip it over every other, or you flip it over every combat if it's a small combat, and every other time you will lose a step. To try and reduce because it's a small combat. It's a funky thing that came out of Death Ride as well, actually. So, and here's where I think this system in particular will probably end up. If there's any rules revision, it'll be just like Death Ride, which started out at 10 or 12 or 15 pages of rules, and then it got to 40 or 50. And now it's 100 plus, and that doesn't even include all of the crazy stuff that's in Death Ride, the wild and crazy stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I'm curious about what people think in terms of how much detail do you want in a monster game at this kind of sort of grand tactical, low-level operational, divisional. The formations are divisions, the units are battalions and companies. What level of detail do you want in your combat and your movement and your supply and your air rules and all the rest of it in a game that's going to be, if you have multiple modules, you're going to be looking at 6 counter sheets worth of stuff, right? A lot of units, a lot of corps, a lot of armies, multiple fronts. There's a limit to the number of mental transactions you're able to do for a system, and I'm curious about what you guys think about that. Whether you love it and want more of it, and ultimate detail, or do you want just enough to get the flavor, or do you want exactly what was going on in the East Front or the West Front or wherever it is, given the time scale and the situation and all the rest of it. All right, I'm going to stop hacking this up. Well, I posted a video on the air war. I think the air war is really interesting in this game. Anyway, catch you soon.